So in the third and final aim, we will be investigating if the eye movement patterns observed during your REM period are at all related to the content of your dream. So in the direction of your eyes that move during your REM period, is it related to what you dream about? Well, we're about to find out. So the independent variable for this aim is the eye movement patterns they were observed. So there were mainly four. So they were mainly horizontal line movements, so left to right, mainly vertical, so up and down, both, and very little to no movement. So the dependent variable is self-report, so the dream recall that the participant narrated to us, and then we related those with awake participants. Again, these four conditions of the IV, they are natural IVs, natural or true IVs. As in, we are in no position to manipulate them, we can simply observe their effects. So in the procedure, what happens is we first observe their eye movement patterns throughout the REM periods using the EOG. A pattern was determined if it lasted for a minute or longer. So if your eyes move in that direction, like horizontal or vertical, for at least a minute, then then we have the certainty that you are having a dream in this pattern of eye movements. And then we listen to the corresponding recording of dreams for that night for the participant, and then we correlated them. So we wanted to see if it's related to it. So then what we did was we took comparison records from 20 awake or naive participants and 5 of our participants that we then woke up, and we made them observe similar situations to those that they had recalled to us in their dream recall. Alright, so these situations again we'll see in the next slide. Why did we do this was to ensure that our results are valid, and previously we had tried waking up the participants and just asking them what direction had their eyes been moving in, but that did not prove useful at all because the participants were either inaccurate or they could not guess very well. And again, I'm assuming if you woke someone up and asked them what direction their eyes had been moving in, they would not be very cooperative, regardless of whether or not they had chosen to participate in your study, I think. So the results of the study say that this aim had been proved based on 35 awakenings of 9 participants. So you might think that this is not a lot of awakenings. However, I'll have you know that the way we validated the dream content and the eye patterns when they were awake shows us a lot. So we observed mainly 3 dreams with vertical eye movements, and the most interesting of which was a man who had dreamt about climbing a series of ladders. So you can imagine how you have to look up and down. By the way, Cambridge requires you to know at least one example of every direction of eye movements. So these are the ones that I find most memorable and easy to write about. There was only one dream where we observed mainly horizontal eye movements, sorry, and it was about a guy who had dreamt about 2 people throwing tomatoes at each other. So you can see how your eyes would move back and forth to one person and then the other. There were 10 dreams in which we had very little or no eye movements. These were often like something staring at distance or driving. Now, for the driving ones, they often reported to us, like just before they woke up, their eyes moved to sharp left, which was also observed on the EOG. Now, because of the dream content, we know that this was because sometimes a man appeared on the left while they were driving, or another car appeared. There were 21 dreams with mixed eye movement patterns that we observed, and it usually involves things like looking at something up close. So, for example, if you're holding something in your hand, you'd be, looking at every facet of it, so your eyes would move up, down, left, right, any which way. And you were arguing with someone, so again, your eyes would be frantically moving. There are some general results that are not aim specific, and these are just things we found out about sleep and REM cycles. So we observed that each REM period can last anywhere from 3 to 50 minutes, and the average for our participants was 20 minutes. All of our participants dreamt every single night, and the good thing about physiological objective measures of dreaming and sleep is that we can be certain of this. So, because of the EEG, we know that the particular frequencies and altitudes of brain waves that we observe, we know that during certain stages the participants had dreamt. And eyes were not constantly in motion during the REM periods. However, activity of the eyes happened in short bursts of movement. So you would, unlike what you would think, in a REM period, your eyes aren't moving all the time. They're simply moving like for a little time at a while. That's why it was important for us to have an objective REM measure, because if we had just to base off of like if we had just observed the participants and we were basing the REM period off of for example, just observing them and seeing if their eyes are moving, we would have missed half the REM periods, because in some periods there was little to no eye movement, but they were still in REM by all means. And we also saw that REM periods were longer later in the night, and when we woke participants up from REM, they did not go back to REM when they went back to sleep, and they only started dreaming when the next REM session arrived. So again, REM sessions are distributed throughout the sleep cycle, and when we woke them up from non-REM stages, however, they immediately went back to non-REM once they went back to sleep. The cycle length did vary for each participant, but it was consistent within each individual. So we did keep them for up to 17 nights, right? So across the participant, cycle length varied from, so I believe the shortest was 4 hours 20 minutes and the longest was 7 hours 15 minutes. However, within each individual, it was consistent. So throughout those up to 17 nights, they were consistent, so they did not vary much. This is again another benefit of using repeated measures design. You are able to separate participant variables from your results so you can better validate them. And more aim, not specific findings, are that we see that dreams accompanied by REM periods occur in discrete periods throughout the course of the sleep cycle. And we aren't, however, certain that there is no dreaming during non-REM periods, but it is highly unlikely because the pattern of brain waves that is observed in non-REM is very similar to heavy sleeping, where your brain is not very active. There is low, low voltage and high frequency. So many dreams can be attributed to memory of dreams lasting longer. So best remembered within 8 minutes. Remember the result that we discussed in the first day. There were some other studies conducted by other psychologists prior to this that related other physiological motions to dreaming. The one we were exploring was eye movements to dreaming. And Vader, or Water, however you say it, explored the connection between gastric contractions, so your abdominal movements throughout the night, to your dreaming. And McGlade related dreaming with foot twitches throughout the night. Again, I find this quite interesting. Foot twitches seems very unusual, doesn't it? But again, both of these studies had either very small awakenings or very few participants, and hence were not able to base any specific or detailed findings. Now, there are some important observations next that might assist you when you are doing your evaluations or when you want to contextualize your answer to be specific to the DEMENT and KLEITMAN study. So these are the controls that we observed. These aren't all of them. Anything that you can think of that either removed an extraneous variable from our study, made it more accurate, reliable, valid, or just overall better, that might be a control. These are the ones that I find best to recall. So there's no caffeine or alcohol like drunk by the participants, because that would have like affected their normal sleep schedule and sleep cycles, and we might not be observing their daily routine. They were told to arrive at their regular sleeping time. So for example, if someone sleeps from 11 p.m. to like 8 a.m., they were told to arrive at the laboratory at 10:30 p.m. so they could, follow their normal sleeping routine. And they were woken all by a standardized doorbell sound. There was no contact with the experimenter until the participant had fully finished waking up and recalling their dream. Again, we mentioned that this will prevent some experimental variables and or demand characteristics. They were all sleeping in the same environment, so any changes or any differences across the participants were not at all due to the environment they had been in. We quantified dream recall by counting the number of words in it. So again, the more quantitative data, the more easy to measure, the more accurate and replicable. And we had objective physiological measures such as the EEG and the EOG. They gave us concrete quantitative data that we could check against. And there were many other controls, any you can think of. Perhaps they're better than even these. So these are some of the ethical guidelines that were followed or broken. So the ones that were followed were that because we made them stick to their normal schedule and otherwise normal diet, excluding caffeine and alcohol, of course, they were pretty comfortable throughout the study, and their comfort was further enhanced by the electrodes that were attached to their scalp and their like eye area, they were bunched up at the top of their head and sort of like a ponytail style, and so they had free range of movement throughout the night and they were comfortable. There was no harm or deception. They were fully aware of what sort of study they were taking part in, informed consent was taken, and nothing unpleasant happened to them for the most part. Confidentiality was maintained, so we only knew them by their initials or code names. We did not know any personal details about the participants. They had a right to withdraw, which was fully exercisable, and we saw that four participants did, in fact, exercise it. And privacy was maintained because the participants were told to tell us any dream recalls which they were comfortable telling us about. So, some ethical issues that might have arisen were that they were woken up many times throughout the night, which might be uncomfortable or distressing and make them less likely to participate in future psychological research. And it can also disrupt their future sleep cycle or like nightly routine. And it might have been uncomfortable to sleep with 5 to 6 electrodes attached to your face and scalp. So these are basically the ethics related portion of this study. I do recommend that you guys do a thorough evaluation table of this entire study, so like make a table and then, so generalizability, reliability, equality, ethics, all of those things. You make a table for and against, and it will help you better understand the strengths and weaknesses of the study. So, and then immediately follow that through with a few 10 markers, the evaluation questions, with different and newer named issues of it. So you'd be getting a grip on the study more, and the evidences will make you recall more details. The quantitative data, I believe here, it's essential to know because it makes your claim on the evidences of the findings very strong. Thank you all for watching, and I hope it was understandable to watch the recording.